In this episode of How an Airstream Works, we're going to talk about propane. It is one of the least understood systems in an Airstream and RVs, and people are very scared of it. I was super scared of it before we started shopping for RVs, but now that I understand it, it's my favorite energy system on the trailer. Before we started full-time, we watched a lot of YouTubers, and one of our favorites was Gone with the Winds, and they were really into induction cooktops and using their inverter and power for everything. They used the propane as little as possible. So before we bought an Airstream, we had it in our mind that we would get rid of all the propane and turn everything to electric. What a mistake that would have been. It was simply me being afraid of it and not understanding it. So this is where the propane is on an Airstream. Let me show you how it works. Pop this off. We've got a little wing nut here. It's really funny. In the early Airstreams in the 50s and 60s and 70s, they didn't have these covers. Your propane tanks are just sitting outside, which is no big deal. It's just a propane tank. But at some point they decided they look ugly and we need to cover them. We're going to spin this off to reveal the propane tanks. Woo! This cover just lifts straight off now. Set this down over here. Here are the propane tanks. This is a 30-pound propane tank. It's a lot like what you have on your gas grill at home. So it contains the LP, or liquid propane. They actually fill it up with liquid, and then the gas at the top is what we use to cook. So to get propane into our system, into our trailer, we're going to open that valve all the way. It will flow through this to our regulator. This regulates the pressure in it. Now we have two tanks, and this little switch tells you which tank you're pulling off of. In here we've got a little indicator that tells us how full it is. Green means we still have plenty of propane. When it starts to turn orange or red, you're getting pretty close to running out of propane on that tank, and you'll flip it over and open this one and turn the other propane tank on. Then you can go get this one refilled. Technically, you could leave this in the middle and it would pull from both, but I never recommend that because then when you never get a backup. It's like a reserve tank. If you totally run out of propane like this, you're done. There's no more heater, there's no more fridge, there's no more cooking. So I always leave it on one. When that empties, I switch it to the other and I start looking for a new propane place to fill this up. So that's the regulator. It takes it from your tanks and it feeds it under the trailer into your trailer. Let me show you what it looks like on the inside. Okay, propane is used for a few things. A lot of things, actually. And propane's been around for a long time. And if your connections are safe and you have your trailer tested, you don't have to worry about it exploding on you. If they're old fittings, if it's been 60 years since someone's looked at them, I would definitely recommend getting them checked. But it's a pretty simple check most RV inspector places can do. Propane is running the fridge. It actually lights a little furnace in there, and just like a AC unit, there's a heat exchanger, and the heat, it blows heat out and puts cold into it. Super, super, super efficient way to run your fridge. We could probably run our fridge for 4 months off those propane tanks, no problem. But if we were to switch it to electricity, it would drain the batteries in like 2 hours. It's pretty crazy how much electricity it takes, but when you switch it to propane, super efficient. We also use propane for our cooktop and for our oven. This is super simple. It's just like a home. Turn it to light and turn your clicker on. Fires right up. Then you adjust your flame there. And we actually love the propane cooktop when we go stay with friends and family and they don't have that. It takes forever for our pots and pans to heat up and it's not as consistent cooking. We love that. The oven, I don't have my clicker with me, but you do a similar thing. You turn it to a pilot, much like a home water heater. You ignite the little igniter in there, and then the pilot flame goes. Close your oven, turn it to the temperature you want, and give it about 20 minutes, and it is at the preheated temperature, and then you just cook like a normal oven. It doesn't have all those fancy timers, and it doesn't beep when it's preheated. It's a pretty simple unit. But I find joy in simplicity, especially on something that's used day in and day out, and that goes down the road shaking and rattling anytime you go somewhere. So that is how that works. Now, propane is also used for your heater, your furnace. Our furnace is underneath here. But when we kick the furnace on, it automatically ignites. You can hear it burning, and it blows the hot air all throughout. And the final thing that propane is used for is the water heater that we showed you in the water episode. I'll cut to a scene real quick of us doing that. Listen. Check this out. Propane is firing at a 6-gallon water tank. So, as you see, propane is extremely useful. It's cheap, it's plentiful, it's easy to get a hold of. There are lots of places that can refill it. It's also really nice because you could take a tank off, throw it in your car, do your groceries that day, get it filled up, and leave the other one on the Airstream and leave it going. So, we are huge fans of propane. I don't think we will ever use a convection microwave. We will always have a propane oven, always have a propane cooktop. We will always have a fridge that runs on propane. It's just so efficient. Now, in some states, there are laws I've heard against driving with your propane tanks on. The states we travel in, that is not the case. So we leave our propane on and we leave our fridge on. Otherwise, every time we drove somewhere, all our food in our fridge would spoil. So that tiny little flame running on that fridge, that is going to we're going to keep the propane on so we can keep that while we're driving. And so our food doesn't spoil. So check your local laws and make sure you're not breaking any laws, but we definitely travel with our propane on. You also have carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors, and some of these have propane detectors as well. And that will detect any leak, and it will beep, beep, beep at you if you've got a propane leak. And there are two dangers with propane. One is it displaces all the air, so you can't breathe anything because all that's in the air is propane. And two, there's a huge ignition danger. So if I turned on all the stoves and walked away, it would just fill this thing with propane. And if a spark happened, it would blow this thing sky high. So propane is dangerous. I don't want to pretend like it's totally perfect. But if you have some common sense, and we've traveled 40,000 miles in 3 years, 2.5 years in our Airstreams using the propane with zero issues. So I'm not afraid of it. I embrace it. I love it. It's clean. It's easy. It's available. And it's super efficient. Another cool thing they do to propane, I mean, we've all smelled it before, is they add a garlic scent to it. Because propane in its natural state is odorless and you can't smell it. So they decided, let's put a scent in there that when you smell it, you know it's propane and you know it's bad and you got to get out of there. So you'll often smell the garlic smell that is actually an additive in your propane. So as you can tell, we are a big fan of propane. I feel silly that we thought we would go all electric just because the Winds did. They're great people and I like a lot of their ideas, but I'm so glad I tested out propane first because I think it's a fantastic energy source. If you learned something from this video and you benefited and it will save you money down the road, consider supporting us on patreon.com. For $3 a month, you can make a big impact to us to help us be able to keep making more videos like this.